morning. Is anybody on? I just wanted to check my audio and make sure everybody could hear me. I guess I'm up first. My name's Dylan DeAscendis.
Good morning, Mr. DeAscendis. Yes, your audio is working fine.
All right, great.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
You're
Yep.
welcome, sir.
Good morning, everyone, and welcome. We will start shortly. Thank you.
How do I get on? Is that better? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Good morning, everyone. Can you hear me? Nod your head. All right.
Good morning.
Good morning, Chairman. Yes, Chairman.
Good morning. We are back on the record in formal case number 1156. Before we begin with the preliminary matters that the commission has pending, I would like to ask the parties if they have any preliminary matters for the commission to consider.
Your Honor, this is Adrienne Mouton Henderson with DC Office of People's Counsel, and we do have 3 preliminary matters this morning.
So proceed.
Thank you. Good morning, Chairman Phillips and Commissioner Beverly on behalf of the Office of the People's Counsel. Our first preliminary matter, Chairman, is that we'd like to ask whether we're going to move the testimony and exhibits to the record at the conclusion of the hearing, or would you like us to provide a list to the commission?
My understanding is that we would do it at the conclusion of the hearing, but I can double check that with counsel to make sure that's the way they want it.
Thank you, Chairman. Additionally, we would like to ask if we are going to be labeling the exhibits how we have in the past, which would be with a letter and the corresponding chronological number. I know yesterday when we were admitting exhibits, we did it with the number. However, for efficiency and to not have confusion into the record, we just want to have a clarifying point where we would be doing that or how you would like us to do that moving forward. So that way, if there's anyone goes back to the evidentiary hearing or goes back to any of the exhibits, we have concise and people can search for those properly.
I did not have an issue with doing it with the numbers as we were doing it yesterday. Can you help me understand what the issue is?
So typically when we have our list of testimony, it corresponds with that particular witness. So for such, we have A-1. I'll use Mr. McGowan has been labeled previously by Pepco as B. And so anything that comes into the record would be B-1, B-2, B-3. And that's just so anyone who searches the record for past exhibits under Mr. McGowan's testimony or anyone else's under OPC or AOBA or DCG, we can go to that specific number as well as that specific alphabet that corresponds with that witness. In the past, that's how we've done it. But yesterday we started chronologically entering exhibits by number. So I just want to make sure that we're consistent with how we're doing. And Fran is also raising her hand.
I see. Fran?
Yes, I did make a phone call about this morning. The reason it's confusing is because, for example, if Mr. Bruce Oliver refers to something in one of his other testimonies, he's referred to it as it was previously labeled. If we have to start changing all the numbers now, when we have conformed testimony, every piece of testimony in this record, the site will have to be changed. So, for example, Mr. Oliver, you get my problem?
I understand the issue now. Thank you for raising the issue. Let's proceed as we have in past practice and go back to our usual labeling, which includes the number and the letter.
Thank you, Chairman. And my last preliminary matter is that the Office of the People's Counsel at this point in time would like to make an oral motion for reconsideration, Chairman, on your ruling yesterday to allow Pepco to add documents into the record without any due process for the office or interveners to confront the information and determine whether it's relevant. Based upon the Federal Rules of Evidence of 134.1 and 134.4, which this commission runs its hearing to require that evidence be relevant and not prejudicial. Additionally, Pepco had made no showing that its request meets those standards, nor did they identify or pre-file a list of documents with the commission that the company seeks to enter into the record. Lastly, Pepco had 6 disputed issues on the list. The company claimed that all of the parties' disputed issues, which were well over 372 issues, were either policy related, not material, or could be resolved based on what has been filed in the record previously. Yet on the first day of hearing, the company seeks to enter hundreds of pages of documents into the record without an opportunity for other parties to review to ensure that these are relevant, and they make no showing that the additional filings that they asked to supplement into the record were relevant to its own issues, let alone those of OPC or the interveners. OPC is in favor of having a robust evidentiary hearing, but we are not in favor of establishing a new precedent, whereby at any time during hearing, a party can add documents to the record without a showing of its relevance to the issues at hand before the commission. OPC respectfully, as the district ratepayers advocate, asks that you reconsider this and that this ruling be held in abeyance until Pepco files a list of its requested admissions, both with the commission and the parties, that we can address the individual documents and decide whether they are relevant to today's hearings.
I'm going to ask the part. Thank you for raising the recount. I'm asking the parties to put your request in writing, and I would also like to hear from the company as well, a response in writing.
Thank you, Chairman.
You have 2 days.
Yeah.
Ms. Francis?
Yes, I would like to echo that motion for reconsideration, Your Honor. I mean, at this point, we saw 2 very different lists from Pepco. One was putting in their own documents, and the second list was supplementing parties' testimony. And that's what the transcript site that I gave you, that I cited yesterday, transcript 2015 in the earlier Pepco case. So they were 2 very different lists. They should be handled separately, differently, as different requests, but we haven't seen any formal filing from Pepco. So at this point, it's unknown. It's unknown what they're asking for.
If I may speak, Your Honor.
Yes, you may speak briefly because I've asked the parties already to put it in writing. Briefly.
Thank you. Just a quick response. The company provided this list of DRs to the parties last week. Again, these were DRs that they propounded upon the company, such that they are aware of them and they've reviewed them. In addition, with regard to the relevancy, these are DRs that are referenced in our company testimony. So there's no question that these DRs are relevant. In addition, the commission has the discretion to give these documents the due weight that they're deserved. Thank you, and we look forward to providing our response to the commission.
Thank you. Move on to your next issue.
Chairman, that concludes all that OPC has preliminarily. Thank you.
Are there any other preliminary matters?
Your Honor, we heard what the party said with regard to identification of pre-filed testimony, so we're willing to re-identify the pre-filed testimony that was admitted into the record yesterday. We can do this now, or we can send an email with those corrections.
The email would be preferable so we can move on.
Will do, and thank you.
The commission, we have, if there are no more preliminary matters from the parties, Ms. Francis?
Okay, my only question is, will the commission be having questions for Mr. Bruce Oliver?
We have no questions.
Okay, thank you, Your Honor.
Additionally, Chairman, I apologize. OPC, we have several witnesses that were waived. We found out last night. They're still on standby for today. Other than Dr. Mariam, does the commission have any questions for any of our other witnesses? If not, we'd like to let them go. However, if the commission wants to have them on standby, we're more than happy to keep them on standby.
We have no questions. They're free to go.
Thank you so much, Chairman.
So this is Brian Caldwell with the district government. The district government has a similar question. We found out last night that the company has no cross-examination for our witness, Courtney Lane. So I would ask the commission has any questions for Ms. Lane, we can make her available. Otherwise, we'd also like to release her.
No questions from the commission. She's free to go.
No questions? Okay, thank you.
Final call. All right. Commission, we have two rulings that we want to issue this morning before we begin. The first ruling concerns AOBA's objection to the admittance of Pepco 7F, Mr. Johannes' testimony. As the commission has stated in prior orders, including order number 20368 in this proceeding, in reviewing a motion to strike, the commission looks to the DC Superior Court Rules of Civil Procedure for guidance. Specifically, Superior Court Rule 12F states that the court will strike from a pleading, quote, any redundant, immaterial, impertinent, or scandalous matter. When the question is one of materiality, motions to strike are not favored and usually will be denied unless the allegation has no possible relation to the controversy and may prejudice another party. Striking all or part of a pleading is a severe remedy that should be used only in cases of palpably requiring it for the administration of justice. Since the parties were unable to come to a consensus about what the material issues of fact that are in dispute in this case, we proceeded with this hearing in order to allow the parties to cross-examine witnesses on the almost 400 issues identified in their joint list. For this reason, we deny the objection and will give Johannes 7F the appropriate weight, if any, it is due. For the second matter that we have before us today, yesterday, AOBA had a motion to change the briefing schedule by having only one brief to be due on December 18th, or in the alternative, initial briefs would be due on December 9th and reply briefs due on December 23rd. Pepco objected to the motion, requesting that the commission maintain the reply brief in the schedule. We will grant AOBA's motion to change the briefing schedule. However, we will maintain both initial briefs and reply briefs. Initial briefs will be due December 9th. Reply briefs will be due December 23rd. That concludes the preliminary matters of the
Thank you,
commission.
Your Honor. Thank you.
With that, we ask the company to call us next witness.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, parties have indicated that they do not have any questions for our witness, Dylan DeCendis, but we have been informed that the commission may, and he is available. If
The only
you would like
question
that.
only question that the commission had was the question yesterday that was put off to Mr. McGowan. If this witness could answer that question, we would call him. If not, we would prefer the company to just do as the commission requested and provide that information as a bench request.
Duly noted. We can provide it as a bench request. And my apologies, Mr. DeCendis, you got dressed up for naught. Looking
I'm
good.
dressed up and nowhere to go, I guess.
Indeed. With that said, our next witness will be, who is it? Brian Clark. And my colleague, Mr. Dennis Jamino, will be introducing him shortly. Thank you.
Thank you.
Excuse me, Chairperson. We
Yes.
need to address an issue with the stenographer. Can we hold for a couple of minutes, please, sir?
How much time do you need?
Perhaps 3 to 4 minutes, sir.
Let's come back at 10:30, everybody. Take a brief
Thank you.
recess.
Jane, can you hear me?
I can't. Okay.
Testing, testing. 1, 2, 3. Testing, testing.
Yes, I can hear you also.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are back on the record in formal case number 1156. So with that, we were ready to move into our first witness for today. Ask the company, do you have any other witnesses that you want to present?
Yes, Chairman Phillips. You can hear me okay?
It's very low, but I can hear you.
Let me try to get this a little closer. Does that do the trick?
That's better.
Okay. Good morning, Dennis Jamino on behalf of Pepco. First, I wanted to make sure we will be calling Brian Clark to make sure he is on the line and unmuted. Brian, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Okay. Can you state your name for the record?
Yes, my name is Brian Clark. I currently serve as the Director of Gas Delivery for Delmarva Power, Pepco Holdings Company.
Mr. Jamino, I skipped this.
Yes, sir.
Let me interrupt you. Ask the Commission Secretary's office to swear the witness.
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Brian, we'll try this again. Good morning. Now that you've been sworn in, we'll make sure your name is still Brian Clark. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay. And you provided direct testimony that's been marked as Pepco I, Pepco I1 and 2 and 3, rebuttal testimony that is Pepco 2I, and surrebuttal testimony that is Pepco 3I, with exhibits 3I1, 2, and 3. Is that correct?
Yes, sir, that's correct.
Okay. Do you have any corrections or additions to these testimonies or exhibits?
No, I do not.
Okay. And if I were to ask you the same questions that are in those testimonies today, would your answers be the same?
Yes, I would.
Okay. Do you adopt your prepared direct rebuttal and surrebuttal testimonies in their entirety in this proceeding?
Yes, I do.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chairman, in accordance with the procedures that we've adopted, at least as of this morning, I would move for preliminary identification of these exhibits as I and the attendant exhibits, 2I and 3I and their exhibits.
Without objection.
Okay, thank you. The witness is ready for questioning.
Office of People's Counsel. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Good morning, Chairman Phillips. Kevin Conoscenti on behalf of the Office of People's Counsel. Mr. Clark, can you hear me okay?
Yes, sir, I can.
Yes, sir. Okay. Just have a few questions for you this morning, Mr. Clark, and I think if all goes according to plan, we'll only need to look at your rebuttal testimony, which has been preliminarily identified as Exhibit 2I. And I'm going to,
I have that.
Okay, and I'm going to start on page 4.
Yes, sir, I'm there.
Mr. Clark, you sponsored the company's construction report in this case, is that correct?
Yes, I do.
And looking at page 4, lines 10 to 13, you indicate there that the construction report in this case serves the purpose of supporting the company's MRP and reliability initiatives, including the company's proposed TIMs. Do I have that correct?
Yes, that's as it reads.
Okay. And then just turning over one page to page 5 now in your rebuttal testimony. And I'm looking at lines 14 through 17. You state there that at the time Pepco filed its MRP, the projects included in the construction report represented Pepco's plan to meet its reliability commitments and goals at the budgets provided in the report. Do you see that?
Yes, I do.
When you developed the construction report, did you rely on the company's load forecasts in order to identify the projects that are needed in the future to meet the company's reliability commitments during the MRP?
With respect to the projects that serve capacity needs on the system, that would be correct. The load forecast would be an indicator as to the quantity and the timing that those projects would be necessary.
And then just moving back up the page a little bit, looking at lines 4 and 5, there you note that the company proactively plans to meet its capacity projections and reliability standards. And I think that's part of what you just answered, but is part of that proactive planning process identifying when new load-driven projects need to be in service in order to maintain reliability on the system?
Yes, that's correct.
And is it the company's load forecasts that helps you proactively identify those reliability concerns?
That's one element of our total portfolio, the capacity needs. When you speak of reliability, there are numerous other objectives under the reliability project portfolio. But in general, yes, we would use the load forecast as an input into the project planning process.
And so you consider it a best practice to utilize a load forecast when developing that construction budget and those construction plans?
Yes, it's long been Pepco's practice, and to my understanding, an industry practice as part of creation of a portfolio and a plan that will meet future needs on the system.
Thank you. Same page, I'm looking at lines 5 through 7 now. And you note there that in addition to the company's merger commitments and the electric quality of service standards, the company's construction budget was also designed to meet Pepco's proposed PIMS targets for reliability. Do I have that right?
Yes, in essence, that's how it reads.
Okay. You've proposed two what you call reliability-related PIMS in this proceeding, is that right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. And those are, well, one is related to the SAIDI metric and another related to the SAFE metric. Is that correct?
That is correct.
And would you agree with me that your proposed reliability PIMS in each case exceeds the reliability standard imposed by the Commission's current electric quality of service standards?
Yes, I would say that they exceed the EQSS and match or slightly exceed the merger reliability commitments in addition.
Thank you. And if we set aside all other variables in the budgeting and construction process, is it fair to say that the company would need to invest more money in the distribution system in order to hit those enhanced reliability metrics?
I'm sorry, could you repeat or restate that question?
Sure. I'll try it this way. I mean, is it fair to say that it would take more investment by the company in the distribution system to hit those proposed PIMS targets as opposed to the EQSS targets?
Depending on the magnitude of difference between the two target levels, yes, it would generally necessarily require more investment targeted at reliability improvement to achieve those.
Okay. When you submitted your construction budget and the construction report in this proceeding, did you identify the incremental spending required to meet the enhanced reliability metrics in the proposed PIMS?
No, I did not.
Okay. Mr. Clark, are you familiar with the enhanced MRP proposal that was submitted by the company in this proceeding?
Only to the extent that I know it was presented. I had no testimony associated with the enhanced MRP.
Yes, but you are aware that the proposal includes, as one of the features, a proposal to defer $60 million of capital forecasted to be placed in service during the original MRP proposal into 2023 or later?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Did you make the determination that $60 million was the appropriate amount of capital to defer under the enhanced MRP?
No, I didn't.
Was it someone in your department?
Not in my current department. As stated, I currently am in the gas division. I don't know to the extent that the current reliability engineering group or capital projects group in Pepco was involved in that decision. My understanding is that it was a decision that was offered up as a potential compromise.
Do you know who in the company made the final determination of the $60 million figure?
Not specifically, but I understand it was put forth, I believe, by Mr. McGowan in his testimony.
I have no further questions. Thank you, Mr. Clark.
You're welcome, sir.
I thank the Office of People's Counsel. On my list, I have no questions by OBA.
Correct, Your Honor.
And District Government, 40 minutes. Ms. Caldwell.
Thank you, Your Honor. I don't think I have 40 minutes worth of questions. I think it'd be substantially shorter than that, but I do have a few questions. Good morning, Mr. Clark. How are you?
Good morning, Mr. Caldwell. I'm great. Thank you.
Good, good. So prospective new business is one of the key sources of information that Pepco looks to when trying to forecast future load on their system, correct?
That's correct.
And likewise, Pepco also considers the impact of distributed generation like solar on future load on their system. Is that correct?
That's also correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, as well as energy efficiency projects?
To the extent we have data, yes.
Okay. But Pepco does not track by ward and by substation the actual past contribution to new load that comes each year from prospective new business, at least not by ward and substation. Isn't that correct?
Can you ask that question again, please? I want to make sure I heard you correctly.
Sure. Pepco does not track by ward and substation the actual past, talking about past contribution to load that came each year from prospective new business, at least not by ward and substation.
I believe it would be tracked by ward, by substation, but not specifically by ward. Wards are not electrical, what we would call electrical subdivisions of our system. And so we would typically track it down from a total system down to substation and down to feeder level. Ideally, we would work at that at the feeder level, and then that would roll up to substations. So I would say half correct, not by ward, but we would have some idea and indication to of the impact on substations by load that has come in.
That's true in the past?
Yeah, that would show up as actual load or usage, and our metering would indicate the contribution from those loads.
Okay. Do you have in front of you the district's list of cross-examination exhibits?
Yes, I believe I do.
Okay. Let me try to share this. Can you turn your attention to what was preliminarily marked DCG 57?
Okay, I have that.
Okay. Trying to get that up myself. And that is Pepco's response to DCG data request 5-17, correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And that that data request asks in reference to your exhibit Pepco I-1. the historical District of Columbia load by ward on pages 9 to 10, it asks if you can provide by ward and substation actual new load from where prospective new businesses from each year from 2013 to 2018. You could provide that data. You see that?
Yes, I do.
Okay. And your response says that the study has not been performed by ward. Isn't that correct?
That is correct.
Okay. But you're saying that you do have that information by substation.
The analysis requested had not been performed at the time of this data request. There would be considerable amount of work to go back and identify the impact from actual loads of prospective new business as they presented themselves. Typically, PMBs don't present their entire loads over the course of a single year. There's a process by which they would move, in many cases, to full occupancy over several years. And so to disseminate that would take a little time to study, but I believe we would be able to pull a representative study of that request together given the appropriate time.
Okay.
At the time, this study had not been performed, nor was it available to provide to you.
Right. Okay. And Pepco doesn't track by ward and substation the actual, or I should say, Pepco does not have the means by which it tracks the actual past megawatt load reduction impacts by ward and substation from distributed energy resources. Is that correct?
That's correct, because those resources present themselves variably based on weather, overcast. It depends on the type of distributed energy that you're talking about. But that's one of the issues that Pepco has sought to improve through its new forecasting process that I outlined in other data requests that would look at the relative impacts of DERs at the feeder level for every hour of the year. So, with respect to peak load impacts, you may not be getting the full contribution at the system peak or even at the feeder peak. But it just totally depends on, again, many factors, including the amount of overcast. So to be able to provide that data first by ward isn't a typical analysis that we would do. At a substation level, having the discrete output of those devices is not something that we have the current technology. We are developing the ability to backcast what that output may have been through our 8760 modifications, 8760 being representative of every hour of the year.
Okay. But that hasn't been implemented yet. Is that
That is not. That'd be implemented in 2021.
2021?
Yes.
When in 2021? Towards the end of the year, towards the beginning of the year, middle of the year?
At last check, they were running somewhere third to fourth quarter, based on my last conversations with the capacity group.
Okay. And I guess the same question about Pepco's ability to track actual megawatt load reduction impacts by substation from energy efficiency programs. Does Pepco have the ability, or has Pepco had the ability to track that?
Not in the past. It's been more or less an inferred value based on what we think may be going on with respect to energy efficiency. We haven't received any definitive data from the DCSEU that would help us to be a little more accurate from that perspective. However, we continue to try to obtain that data as input into our forecast.
Okay. And is that the only way that the company would be able to track the impacts of energy efficiency programs on its system, is if it receives information, that information from the DCSEU?
Yeah, DCSEU, I believe, is the repository for the dissemination of that data, or for the collection and eventual dissemination of that data. And so from that perspective, it would be a more accurate input into our models than what we've had to do in the past, just inferring based on what's going on from a technology perspective, a word of mouth type perspective. So having that storehouse of data would be helpful in analyzing the EE benefits.
Okay, Pepco doesn't track peak hourly load by circuit for distribution planning purposes. Isn't that correct?
Peak hourly load by circuit. No, not today, but as stated, as a part of the 8760 process, we will be looking at it on an annual, or for the entire year, for every hour of the year. So essentially, what we're collecting is on a what we'll be collecting is on a per feeder basis. What was the peak load during that hour? And then using that as inputs, not only to our peak load forecast for the day or for the year, but also into some of our off-peak loading impacts, so that we better understand and can account for the impacts from various DERs that will be either currently on the system or added to the system.
Okay, can you tell me what is the distributed energy resources and the distributed system planning process document? Are you familiar with that?
Yes, I am. It's a document that's currently undergoing modification based on the entire upgrade of our load forecasting process. The next iteration of that document would be due out sometime in conjunction with the entire 8760 process and the revamp of not the revamp, but the upgrades of our load forecasting.
Okay, this document was last produced or published in September of 2016. Is that correct?
Yeah, subject to check. I believe that's about the correct timing.
That was the last time it was updated, and there doesn't appear probably won't be any updates until 2021. Is that correct?
That's my current understanding, based on, again, discussions with the capacity planning group. They are working on modifying that document along as they are modifying and putting into place the upgrades and modifications to the load forecasting process.
Okay, so that's been about 5 years. Would it be fair to say that a lot has happened in the DER space in the last 5 years?
Could you recharacterize that? I mean, for the electric company, DERs have been available for more than 5 years.
Yeah, I guess.
Are you speaking more in the policy space? Or?
Yeah, yeah. My apologies. That's what I mean. In the sort of policy arena, in front of the Public Service Commission and the DC Council, DERs have been a topic of considerable discussion and policy implementation. Isn't that correct?
Yeah, there's been a lot of work, not just in the District of Columbia, but obviously nationwide. A lot of developments from a policy perspective. A lot of goals and initiatives have been set forth, as well as some advancements in technology in order to aid in the support of those goals and initiatives.
So, wouldn't you think it would be prudent for the company to update this document more frequently than every 5 years?
I think
given
that's
given the speed of policy evolution in this area.
Well, updating the document just sets another snapshot in time. I would also argue that with all of the changes, it's probably to some advantage not to have multiple iterations of a document out there until policy is fully set. The company continues to participate in and support the various work groups in all of its jurisdictions, and the District of Columbia being one of the most, I guess, leading in that area. And so until policy rules, regulations, and processes are kind of set forth, which to my understanding is currently ongoing, the creation of a document that would be rendered moot in a very short period of time probably would lead to more confusion than aid or assistance.
Mm-hmm.
But we stand ready once we have the rules, once we understand, and once we have all the elements of our load forecasting process in place, we stand ready to not only provide the updated document, but to obviously work with stakeholders and collaborators to assure understanding and the effectiveness as well as the completeness of those documents.
Okay, so you anticipate that point in time will occur at some point in time in 2021?
That's my expectation based on the current timetables that I'm seeing out there. That's our desire and our goal.
Okay. Can I turn your attention to what was preliminarily marked as DCG 66? I'll pull that up really quick here.
Yes, I have it.
Okay. And that's that question asks how many potential non-wires alternatives or NWAs has Pepco evaluated in each of the past 5 years? You see that?
Yes, I do.
And in your response, you attach a list of NWAs that have been proposed by Pepco in the past 5 years. And pulling up that attachment, it's vertical, unfortunately. But do you see the attachment?
I see the attachment, but I would correct you in that the word proposed versus analyze or evaluated to me would be two different concepts. But these are two projects that have been seriously evaluated for efficacy as far as as NWAs.
Okay. So Pepco in the past 5 years has proposed 2 NWA projects. Is that correct? Or evaluated? I'm not sure what word are we using? What verb?
Well, I believe the question asks for evaluated as opposed to proposed.
Okay, so these are the 2 projects that Pepco has evaluated in the past 5 years, NWA projects, correct?
Yes, that we believe would have been viable based on the time of the evaluation.
Okay, and one project is a battery project to potentially defer the need of a 4th transformer at Pepco's recently approved Mount Vernon substation. That was the subject matter, formal case 1144. Is that correct?
I believe so. I wasn't a party to that case, but I believe that is correct.
And would it be fair to say that this battery project was a concession to objections from DOEE and OPC during that proceeding, that the substation wasn't necessary or could be deferred in total by strategic incorporation of non-wires alternatives?
This is Dennis Chairman. I have to object to that question. He just said he was not involved in the Capital Grid proceeding.
The witness can answer the question to the best of his ability. If he doesn't know, if he wasn't involved, he can say he wasn't involved.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'm unaware of the process that occurred during that particular proceeding, and as far as the outcome and the concessions, I have no characterization of how that was arrived at.
Okay. And the second NWA project was it's part of Pepco's application for the multi-year rate plan. Is that correct?
I'm sorry, can you repeat that?
The second project, the Alabama Avenue substation feeder, that was something that was part of the MRP application that Pepco proposed, correct?
Yes, it was. However, that particular project was alleviated or dealt with in a different to a different process, and the battery itself has since been repurposed into another project outside of the scope of the MRP. I believe that the title of that project is Congress Heights, and it'll be used as a feeder load relief project that happened to require the same amount of impact from a battery.
Okay, so both of these projects would go forward whether or not the MRP is ultimately approved. Is that correct?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Did Pepco evaluate any of the projects that are listed in, or I say propose or evaluate any of the projects that are listed in your exhibit I-2 to determine whether an NWA would be more cost effective than traditional construction?
It's possible, based on the timing and the time frame that we're talking about, that NWAs may have been a part of the consideration. I will say that, you know, from my general knowledge of what's going on in the industry, back at the time that these projects were being developed, the cost of NWAs and more specifically battery type technology was still pretty steep. And you know, generally, as a rule, those projects would have discounted NWAs, specifically batteries, as a solution, just based on what we knew about market pricing, as opposed to some of our standard solutions that had been used to resolve similar problems over time. Over the last, I would say, 2, maybe 3 years at most, we've seen significant lowering of prices in the market for specifically battery storage as an alternative. And so as a result, the years beyond the years specified in this MRP, in all likelihood, will have more opportunity for battery type projects to be specified as non-wires alternatives to traditional projects, just simply based on the market, the economics in the market, and how the cost benefits cases now present themselves, as opposed to back when this particular period of projects was being developed.
Okay, I'm a little bit confused about the timeline that you just laid out, because you said that the price for battery storage technology as a viable option to traditional capital construction has gone down significantly in the past several years, but these are projects that are currently being proposed by Pepco. So did you or did you not account for that lowering cost of storage technology in your evaluation of whether or not NWAs would be a viable alternative to these construction projects?
As I stated, we had general knowledge of what the industry would bear as opposed to our typical solutions. And I would say that the projects that would be of significant interest with respect to NWAs would be some of the capacity type projects, typically I would say substation projects. Understanding the timeline necessary to develop a substation project, I think, will give you a little better insight as to the reason why you can't back up midstream and redo a project as it's starting to get into the design and development phases from a pre-construction perspective. Typically, it can take as many as 5, 7, even up to 10 years, depending on the acquisition of land associated with certain substation projects, from the time that those are conceived to the time that they actually go in service. And the large majority of that is, you know, initial upfront preparation, design, and a lot of the analysis and work necessary to design and build the project and order the materials, which are typically long lead time. To walk backwards because of the availability would have subjected us to significant challenges with respect to having acquired materials for substations that were ultimately materials that were ultimately not used. So that's one element. So I think you just have to really take into consideration the time frame for development of those types of projects that would lend themselves in the future world to NWAs. Back during that time, we were already well into the development of those projects.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you correctly, it sounds like what you're saying is that any, NWA projects that will be proposed as alternatives to traditional capital construction won't occur or won't be proposed until well after the 3-year time frame proposed in this MRP. Is that correct? Not well after, but we'll just say after the time period of this MRP.
Yeah, we are. I believe in the process of developing RFPs for those types of projects as a part of the entire process we participated in the Power Path DC effort, and we're starting to see the integration of the new rules and expectations arising out of that collaboration to start to have an impact on our future planning.
Okay, and that's a process that's totally independent of this MRP.
That is correct.
Okay. I believe that's all the questions I have this time. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Caldwell. On my list, I believe that is all of the interveners that had questions for you, Mr. Clark. The commission does not have any questions. At this time, the parties can now move their exhibits into evidence.
Thank you, Your Honor. Dennis Jamino again. Whoops, let's get this closer. Is that okay? Can you hear me now?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so I would move that we admit Pepco I, I1, I2, I3, as well as Pepco 2I, and then Pepco 3I, 3I1, 3I2, and 3I3 into the record, please.
Without objection.
Thank you.
People's Counsel.
Nothing from OPC, Chairman Phillips.
District Government.
Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to have what was preliminarily marked as DCG 57. I guess I should have marked it before, but marked for identification as DCG 7 and have that moved into the record, as well as what was preliminarily marked as DCG 66. If I could have that marked as DCG 8 and have that moved into the record as well.
Without objection. All right. We thank the witness. You are dismissed.
Thank you, Chairman Phillips and Commissioner Beverly. Good seeing you.
Good to see you. All right. Call your next witness.
Your Honor, if we may, I think we have a different witness also remote, and then a different attorney. Could we take 2 or 3 minutes to so I can clean up the workstation and get the new person in here?
Certainly. We're going to stay here. Everybody just hold tight. Take the time you need.
Thank you.
I think I'm on. Good morning, Your Honor. Can you hear me? This is Andrea Harper.
Yes, Ms. Harper, I can hear you and see you. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good morning. I'd like to call to the witness, to the stand witness, William Zarakis, please.
Good morning, Mrs. Rocks. Good morning. Commissioner Secretary's office, can you swear in the witness?
Yes. Raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
Yes, I do.
Thank you.
Thank you. Please state your name again for the record, Mr. Zarakis.
William Zarakis. I'm a principal at the Brattle Group.
Great. Are you the same William Zarakis who provided direct testimony that's been marked Pepco J and exhibit Pepco J1, the supplemental testimony that's been marked Pepco 2J, the rebuttal testimony that has been marked Pepco 3J, and the surrebuttal testimony that has been marked Pepco 4J?
Yes.
Do you have any corrections to any of these testimonies or exhibits, sir?
No, I don't.
Okay. If I were to ask you the same questions today that are in your testimonies, would your answers be the same?
They would.
Do you adopt your prepared direct, supplemental, rebuttal, and surrebuttal testimonies in their entirety in this proceeding?
I do.
Thank you, Your Honor. The witness is ready for cross-examination.
Thank you. Office of People's Counsel.
We have no questions for this witness, Chairman.
It would help if I looked at my list. District Government. Mr. Caldwell. May have stepped away. There he is. I see him come.
Here. Sorry. No, we have no questions for this witness.
Any interveners have questions for Mr. Zarakis? And the commission has no questions. Ms. Harper?
Well, Your Honor,
This witness is ready to go.
wonderful. That was a very easy cross-examination. I would like to move for identification in this proceeding, please. Pepco J and the associated exhibit, Pepco 2J, Pepco 3J, and Pepco 4J.
Without objection.
Okay. And then I'd like to also move them into the record at this time.
Objection. They are accepted into the record.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir. Good to see you.
I'll see you.
Next witness.
And we will be switching attorneys and witnesses, so we're going to log out again, sir, if you'll just bear with us.
Sure.
Thank you.
Hi, good morning. This is Dennis Jamin. I think we're ready again. Thank you for the time for us to get settled.
Certainly. Let's
Okay,
proceed.
thank you. So I'm going to call Miss Tammy Sanford. And Miss Sanford, are you, just to make sure you're on, you can hear me okay?
I can, yes.
Great. Can you state your name for the record?
Tammy Sanford.
I'm sorry, I did it again. Yep.
Yes.
It's me. Commissioner Secretary's office, please.
Raise your right hand, please. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, Miss Sanford. Are you the same Tammy Sanford that provided direct testimony that was marked as Pepco K, Pepco Exhibits K1, 2, 3, and 4, the rebuttal testimony marked as Pepco 2K, and the surrebuttal testimony marked as Pepco 3K?
Yes, I am.
And do you have any corrections to any of these testimonies or exhibits?
No, I do not.
Do you adopt these testimonies, that is the direct, rebuttal, and surrebuttal testimonies in their entirety?
I do.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, then I would like to have these preliminarily marked as we just did as Pepco K, Exhibits K1, 2, 3, and 4, Pepco 2K, and Pepco 3K, please.
So marked.
Okay. The witness is available for cross-examination. Thank you.
Office of People's Counsel.
We have no questions for Ms. Sanford, Your Chairman.
Thank you. Next I have District Government. Mr. Cole.
My apologies. Yes, Your Honor, we have a few questions for Ms. Sanford.
Proceed.
Good morning, Ms. Sanford. My name is Brian Caldwell. I'm representing the District of Columbia government. How are you doing today?
So far, so good. Thank you.
Good. I just have a couple of questions. I'd like to ask you if you have the District of Columbia's list of cross-examination exhibits in front of you.
I have them. Let me just find them very quickly.
I'm going to pull them up as well.
I think I have them.
Great. Can you turn your attention to what was preliminarily marked as DCG 86?
Sure, I'm there.
Okay, and this is the District of Columbia's the Pepco's response to the District of Columbia government follow-up data request 3-35. And this data request asks if Pepco could clarify. I'm looking at follow-up request paragraph A, or question A. If Pepco could clarify whether it's actively seeking recovery of insurance proceeds. Well, let me back up for 1 second. Pepco has a number of insurance policies that it could potentially receive proceeds from in connection with the cleanup of Pepco's Benning Road facility. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Right, and that's in connection with the remedial investigation and feasibility study that's being conducted on those premises pursuant to a consent decree with the District Department of Energy and Environment.
So, well, Pepco has a number of policies related to environmental coverage, pollution coverage. They're not directly related to the Benning Road cleanup, but I suppose one can seek recovery for costs related to the Benning Road cleanup through some of those policies.
Okay, and you did produce a list of potential policies that Pepco could tap in response to a data request from the Office of People's Counsel. Isn't that correct?
Yes, we produced a list of, I believe, 177 insurance policies. That's correct.
I was going to ask you what the number of policies were, but you anticipated that there's 177 policies that potentially could cover some or part or all of the cleanup remediation costs. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. And so in this data request to Pepco, the follow-up data request, which asks if Pepco could clarify whether Pepco is actively seeking recovery of insurance proceeds under all of the 177 policies identified in that OPC data response. You respond that Pepco is actively seeking recovery from any appropriate insurer. And you go on to qualify that with those insurers that are solvent and do not have exclusion for pollution liability. Do you see that response?
Which one specifically are you referring to?
That's Pepco's response to District of Columbia follow-up data request 3-35. That's the follow-up response. Response number A, letter A.
Okay. Yep, I see that.
Okay. Now, when you say that you're actively seeking recovery from any appropriate insurer, are you referring specifically to the 177 policies that Pepco identified?
Yeah, yes, that's correct. In general, Pepco is seeking recovery, actively seeking recovery for all 177 policies. We have put the policyholders on notice for all of those policies of a potential claim, and we continue to provide them updates as updates are available. For instance, when the remedial investigation for the Benning Road facility was completed, we provided that update. When the interim ROD was released for the Anacostia River Sediment Project, we provide them that update. That's for all of them. Our technical insurance experts, as well as our our legal counsel that works on insurance, are actively working with all of those carriers, and we meet with our consultant that is supporting our recovery effort on about a weekly basis. So we are aggressively pursuing insurance recovery. That being said, it's going to be a long process until that is complete. And so we continue to work it. Although I can't guarantee recovery, I can ensure you that we are working with the carriers. And I would also just add that the discussions that we're having with the carriers, they are confidential discussions. All of the ones that we are currently speaking with have engaged counsel. And so those are confidential settlement discussions. I can't disclose what is happening there. And actually, if I did, that would be to the detriment of the ratepayers, right? It might identify our strategy with the carriers that we were pursuing, but we are aggressively pursuing it with all the carriers.
Okay, so as of right now, I'm not asking about any specific carrier or any specific policy, but as of now, has Pepco received any assurance or indication from any of these carriers that the costs for this remediation that Pepco is seeking to recover from ratepayers that will be reimbursed either in whole or in part?
As I said, we're in the midst of confidential settlement negotiations, so I'm not going to reveal anything about the discussions that have taken place. And I certainly don't want to wager a bet as to whether we will or will not be granted recovery. I hope so, but I can't guarantee it at this time.
Okay. And you said that the timeline for any recovery will potentially be a long timeline?
It's hard to say. So the total costs of Pepco will be seeking recovery not only for the investigative costs, but for the remediation costs. And so some of those costs are not yet known. And so that is something we're working through with the carriers, but it might take some time before those costs are known. We certainly would not want to resolve a claim prematurely.
Okay, so you're saying that until the cleanup is actually completed, there may not be any recovery of insurance proceeds because the costs are not yet haven't been fully formed.
So I don't want to say that about all of the about all of the policies. It's possible that a claim could be resolved with a carrier that provided coverage for a certain period of time sooner than that, but it's certainly possible that we would not have resolved all of the claims we may have until the end of remediation. But I don't want to speculate one way or the other.
Okay. When do you have an estimate of time when the end of remediation will occur?
I don't. We're still in the RI, remedial investigation, FS feasibility study phase. And so it's very hard to say at what point remediation would actually start and then when it would be complete.
Are you familiar with remediation projects that are similar to the one that Pepco is undertaking, both at Benning Road, and we're also talking about the Anacostia River Sediment Project, isn't that correct? Pepco is also seeking insurance recovery for the Anacostia River Sediment Project, the RI and FS costs that could potentially be responsible for.
Well, at this point, Pepco has not been allocated any costs associated with the Anacostia River Sediment Project. So I'm specifically referring to the Benning Road matter where Pepco is leading the RIFS and will conduct remediation.
Okay. So then let's just stick with the Benning Road remediation project. Are you familiar with other remediation projects of the kind that at Benning Road, like we're talking specifically about PCBs, isn't that correct?
Are you asking about the particular contaminant of concern?
That's correct. At Benning Road is PCBs that are the primary contaminant of concern.
I guess there are several contaminants of concern that we're looking at. PCBs will probably be the primary driver of the cleanup.
Okay, so again, like my question is, are you familiar with the timeline that it takes for remediation of any sites similar to the Benning Road site?
Generally, I'm familiar with contaminated sites that are similar in nature to the Benning Road, but I want to make it absolutely clear that no two sites are identical. Every site has a different set of facts and circumstances that will play into the time it takes to conduct an investigation and the time it takes to do remediation. So I don't want to draw conclusions between the Benning Road site and any other site for that matter, for that fact, because they're all different.
Okay, but I mean, based on your familiarity with these other sites, I mean, how long could it take? Potentially, would you? How long? What would be? Just your. I'm not trying to hold you to any specific, time frame or amount of years, but what would be a typical amount of time to achieve remediation site, such as at Benning Road?
Wait,
Yeah.
you hold 1 second, Ms. Sanford. This is Dennis Chamino with Pepco. I'm going to have to object because she has now answered this question 2 different ways and provided her answer. I'm not sure what more could be gained.
Okay, let me try it this way. In your experience and familiarity, could it take 5 years to clean up Benning Road? More or less than 5 years?
I really am uncomfortable speculating on how long it's going to take to clean up the plant. There are certainly, in some cases, someone decides to do early action. Sometimes remediation happens later. We're not at the point yet where those decisions have been made. And of course, they will be made in concert with district government and DOEE, who is overseeing the Benning Road RIFS and is well aware of the timeline that we're working on that project. So I just don't want to speculate, given where we are in the process, on how long it will take to complete the remediation on that property.
Okay, but you did use the word long in your description, so I was just trying to get a sense of what you mean when you say long. But if you don't feel comfortable answering the question, that's fine. I'm sorry.
Well, I was going to say, I said long, I think, with respect to insurance coverage, and I just meant, we're not going to have an answer within the next year.
Okay. How many insurance carriers have you met with to date?
We're in discussions. I don't know exactly what qualifies as a meeting, but we're in discussions with all of them. And we talked to not all of them, we talked to a subset of them. I don't have an exact number on a periodic basis.
Okay. Okay. However, if and when Pepco does receive proceeds from these insurance policies and carriers, that is money that Pepco intends to apply to offset the cost of the remediation to ratepayers. Is that correct?
I think what we've said, and I think I say this in my testimony, is if in fact at some point in time we do receive money from insurance policies, that money if money had been collected from ratepayers, that money would absolutely be returned to ratepayers.
Okay. But you said the insurance companies do not want to commit to any sort of final payment of proceeds until the final costs are known, correct?
Well, that's not, I don't know that I would say that's true of all carriers. I said, I don't want to divulge our strategy for the insurance claims here because it would be to the detriment of ratepayers. It's possible that some carriers may want to settle sooner, and it's possible that others would prefer to wait until we have a little bit of additional information. I don't want to speak for them. And again, the nature of the discussions that we continue to have with them are confidential settlement discussions.
Okay, but that being the case, why is it that Pepco is seeking to recover costs from ratepayers now for the Benning Road cleanup when the total costs of the Benning Road cleanup are not known? And similarly, the amount of proceeds from insurance providers is not known.
We are seeking to recover actual costs that the company has incurred related to the Benning Road investigation and the remediation of the cooling towers. That's absolutely correct. We're seeking recovery of those costs now, and we've committed that if we receive insurance proceeds at some point in the future, which I cannot guarantee, that money would be returned to ratepayers.
Okay. Can I call your attention to what was, I'm sorry, could I have DCG 86 marked for identification as DCG 9?
So marked.
And then the following data request, which was preliminarily marked as DCG 87, contains a confidential attachment, which we're just discussing, not in any particularity, but I'd like to have DCG 87 and the attachment marked as DCG 10.
So marked, and to be clear, you're not asking to go into confidential session.
No, I'm not. I'm done with that exhibit. And Sanford, if you could turn to what was preliminarily marked as DCG 92. Let me know when you're there, Ms. Sanford.
Okay, I'm there.
Okay. And this is Pepco's response to District of Columbia Data Request 3-23, correct?
Yes, it looks that way.
Okay. And this question asked about an exhibit that was attached to your testimony, K-2, which listed a number of remediation projects that had occurred at the Benning Road site. Is that correct?
You're asking about the previous investigations referred to in the question? I just want to make sure I'm understanding you.
Right. In the exhibit that's attached to your testimony, it listed a number of remediation projects that occurred in the past at Benning Road.
Yeah, sure. I'm just going to turn to my testimony. Give me one moment, please.
It's, yeah, in Exhibit K-2, pages 21 to 23.
Okay, one moment. Okay, I'm there now.
Okay, and I'm actually referring to your response, questions A and B, where you,
I'm sorry. You said you're referring to my response to questions A and B of question 23?
Correct.
So these aren't my responses. This is a data request sponsored by Mr. Zeminski. So I did not prepare this response.
Right. Do you have any familiarity with past cleanup actions at Benning Road?
In general, yes, I'm familiar with some of the past cleanup actions at Benning Road, but I just wanted to make it clear that I did not respond to this data request.
Okay. But is it fair to say that there have been a number of past cleanup efforts at Benning Road?
There were six documented spill incidents that had happened at the Benning Road that were properly cleaned up in accordance with all the rules and regulations that existed at the time those spills occurred. That's true, yes.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and they mostly had to do with cleanups of PCBs as well, correct?
Some of them had to do with PCBs. Yeah, that's right.
Mm-hmm. And did Pepco attempt to recover costs from ratepayers for the cost of those past cleanups?
I can't answer that question. I'm not part of the rate making team. I was definitely not at Pepco in the 80s, 90s, or even the early 2000s. So I simply can't answer that question.
Okay, so you don't know the response?
I don't.
Fair enough. I have no further questions.
Thank you. Any other interveners have any questions for the witness? That's all I have on my list. The commission has no questions. We can do exhibits.
Great. Thank you, Your Honor. Again, Dennis Jamino with Pepco. We would move that Pepco K, including K1, K2, K3, and K4, as well as Pepco 2K, and finally Pepco 3K be entered into the record, please.
Without objection.
Thank you.
District government, move your exhibits.
Yes, and I'm sorry, I forgot to mark was identified as DCG 92 as DCG 11. That was the last exhibit I was referring to, which listed previous cleanup sites at Benning Road.
But Your Honor, I'm sorry, Brian. We do have an objection to that exhibit because, as the witness said, it was not sponsored by her, and she didn't even have familiarity with at least two subparts of the question.
I'm going to sustain it, Mr. Caldwell.
That's fine. Yeah, that's fine. So at this time, I'd like to move into the record DCG 9 and DCG 10.
Without objection. Very well.
Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Sanford, you are dismissed. Okay. Pepco, do you have any remaining witnesses?
We do have one, Your Honor. We also have the musical chairs going on. If we could be given a moment to switch.
So take it to.
Okay. Thank you.
Hello again, Your Honor. Can you hear me? This is Andrea Harper.
Yes, Ms. Harper, I can hear you.
Fabulous. Thank you. And we have Mr. Sullivan. Can you see and hear him?
Yes, I see Mr. Sullivan. Ms. Sullivan, can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
I hear you loud and clear. Will the Commission Secretary please swear in the witness?
Raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth and nothing but the truth, sir?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Sullivan, can you please state your name for the record?
William Sullivan.
Are you the same William Sullivan who provided direct testimony that's been marked Pepco M with exhibits Pepco M1 and Pepco M2 and the rebuttal testimony that has been marked Pepco 2M?
Yes, I am.
Do you have any corrections to those testimonies or exhibits?
I do not.
If I were to ask you the same questions today that are in your testimonies, would your answers be the same?
Yes, they would.
And do you adopt your prepared direct and rebuttal testimonies in their entirety in this proceeding?
I do.
Your Honor, I'd like to mark for identification in this proceeding Pepco M and its associated exhibits and Pepco 2M, please.
So mark.
Thank you. And Mr. Sullivan is ready for cross-examination.
So we have Leona.
Yes, Your Honor. Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Sullivan.
Good morning.
My name is Ryan Petruska. I'm an attorney for the Baltimore Washington Laborers District Council. My client is a labor union that represents workers who work on Pepco's electric lines, but for outside construction contractors, not representing direct employees of Pepco. So when I refer to employees of outside contractors, are you familiar with who I'm referring to?
Yes, I am.
Okay, great. That's who I'm going to be. My questions are going to be focused on that group of workers employed directly by Pepco, but working for contractors that Pepco hires. Okay?
Yes.
Great. All right. Is understanding that when Pepco hires these construction contractors, that it has a standard contract with a set of terms and conditions that apply to the relationship between Pepco and the contractors?
Yes, we use a term master service agreement with terms and conditions.
All right. Okay. And isn't it the case that one of the terms and conditions in the comply with applicable laws?
You were breaking up a little bit there. Could you repeat the question?
Isn't it true that one of the terms in that master agreement contractors are comply with applicable laws?
That is correct.
Okay. All right, I'm going to try to share my screen here, so bear with me.
Okay.
Okay.
You're breaking up again. I can see the document, yes.
My screen
but you are
looking. Right. So just bear with me on the connection. I hope it gets us through.
Yes.
And if you need me to repeat anything, just as you're doing, don't hesitate to ask.
Thank you.
Okay. This letter, which has previously been marked as BWLDC Cross Exhibit 1, are you familiar with this letter?
I am familiar with the letter.
Okay. And isn't it the case that this letter was submitted to the commission by Pepco at the commission's request?
That's my understanding.
And it addresses complaints that were raised at a public hearing sponsored by the commission from workers who complained about receiving DC's minimum wage.
That's also my understanding that a couple workers at a public hearing made comments.
Okay. And in this letter, Pepco cites its terms and conditions, its master terms and conditions that has adopted after its merger with Exelon. That's on page 2. Do you see that at the bottom?
In addition, since its merger with Exelon, Pepco has adopted Exelon's master terms and conditions for the purchase of products and services?
Yes.
Yes.
And then the term and conditions cited is the one that we previously discussed about contractors complying with applicable laws. Is that right?
That would be part of the terms and conditions. That's correct.
Okay. If you move down to the third full paragraph on page 3, the letter speaks of tools available to Pepco to enforce contractors' compliance with those obligations. Do you see that?
Starts with excellent T's and C's, give Pepco substantial tools. Yes, I do see that paragraph.
Right. And the first such tool is the ability to request documents.
Correct.
And the second one is to conduct an audit of the contractor's files, including wage and hour records. Is that basically right?
It gives the Pepco the right to audit contractors' files and records regarding utilization of contractor personnel here under including and without limitation wage and hour records. Correct.
Okay, thank you. Now, this letter was written 3 years ago. Is that right?
Dated October 23rd, 2017.
Right. And do you know if since this letter, if Pepco has conducted any audits of contractors to investigate compliance with wage and hour law?
Yes, they have. I heard some testimony yesterday from Mr. McGowan and did check into that, and we have confirmed that.
You know how many audits?
They were done at the request of counsel, and it's under attorney-client privilege.
Okay. Are you saying that the number of audits conducted is subject to attorney-client privilege?
It would be the number and the substance of the audits.
Okay. Okay, and just so I can understand what you're saying that the audits were performed at the request of counsel, and the audits of third-party contractors are subject to attorney-client privilege.
That is correct.
Okay, well, that's at least what you're saying. Do you know, you provided testimony in part responding to testimony provided by BWLDC, is that right?
Can you be specific to what testimony?
Well, you submitted a SIR reply testimony responding to the rebuttal testimony of BWLDC.
If you could point to me specifically what you're talking about.
Okay. So I'm looking at witness Sullivan. Pepco rebuttal.
Rebuttal testimony?
Yes.
Okay.
Pepco rebuttal response to BWLDC witnesses.
What page is that on?
Oof. In the document I have, it's on page 680.
Okay.
The rebuttal.
Let me look and see. I see one that starts with
Your
Roman
testimony
numeral
is much.
2, response to BWLDC witnesses.
Right.
Question
Right.
5. That's the one.
Right.
Okay.
That's right. That's the rebuttal. In making this rebuttal, did you review any of Pepco's responses to BWLDC's DRs?
Did I review? I'm trying to understand the question. You're asking me in creating this rebuttal, did I review of any of Pepco's
responses to BWLDC's DRs?
I don't recall.
Okay. Let me ask you this, and I understand you understand that there's confidentiality that applies, but do you know approximately when these audits of contractors was performed?
I don't know if confidentiality applies to that, but I know it's been within the last year.
In the last year. Okay.
Mr. Petrosky, this is Chairman Phillips. I think it may help us all a little bit if you were to sort of give us what the point is, what point you're trying to get to with this line of questioning. It might hurry it along.
Yeah, and I appreciate that. My problem is this, and this is why I'm sort of getting into detail, is BWLDC received a response to a data request inquiring about what actions Pepco had taken, to respond to ensure that workers were paid the proper wage, and that's this question number 3. And at the time, the response was that there was only this letter, the letter that is the exhibit that we've been talking about, this letter from October 23rd. Let me see the date of this. October 23rd, 2017. So I was trying to establish the date that this was provided in this proceeding, because there apparently has been subsequent, well, there may have been, I guess. I'm trying to figure out if there may have been subsequent activity that occurred after the response to this DR was given. And so that's why I'm asking about the date, because based upon the DR, my client's previous understanding is that Pepco had not taken any actions following 2017.
Thank you for explaining that. Please proceed.
Right. Let me just check one.
So Your Honor, if I may, this is Andrea Harper.
Yes.
I believe we're getting more into legal argument than we are argument with this witness. And to the extent that this Mr. Petruska is questioning whether BWLDC was correct at the time that it was answered, I can say it absolutely was.
So it appears that the company has stipulated to the question that you had for the witness. Do you have another question for the witness, Mr. Sullivan?
Okay. Yeah, let me try to. Well, so the only question I guess I have is just on these audits that for. Can you tell me how many contractors were audited?
As I said, it's under attorney-client privilege.
Again, Your Honor, we're in legal discussions. This is, in fact, attorney-client privilege. It was sought of
We've
request to
tread
counsel.
this ground. We've already plowed this ground a little bit.
Right, but
please move.
may I point out that there is there's a third party being audited. The doctrine of attorney-client privilege, a third party will vitiate the privilege if they if they have access to the same information. Attorney-client privilege only applies to the client and the attorney. So I would concede that they have privilege with respect to internal communications between their attorneys and
First of all, Mr. Petruska, you went out, so I'm not sure I heard your entire argument. But the results of an internal audit of our third-party contractors that is sought at the request of counsel absolutely is covered by privilege. And in fact, in order number 20274, excuse me, sir, 20272 in this proceeding, Your Honor, the commission cited to certain cases regarding privilege in rejecting some arguments that OPC had made seeking privileged and work product documents. One of the cases, which is Upton versus US, which is in footnote 49, the privilege exists to protect not only the giving of professional advice to those who can act on it, but also giving of information to the lawyer to enable the lawyer to give sound and informed advice. And that is exactly what went on here. The lawyer sought this information in order to be able to give informed and sound advice. So this is protected under Upton. Further, it's also work product privilege. And that again in 50 is your footnote 50. There were a number of citations there which cover work product, but this is protected information.
The commission is not inclined to pierce the protection of the attorney-client privilege or the work product privilege here today in this proceeding. I would implore you to move on. So.
Okay.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Are you able to, Mr. Sullivan, are you able to reveal whether or not any violations of minimum wage were uncovered by the audit?
Your Honor, that would be the product of attorney-client privilege.
Is there any information that you can provide about the audits that you believe would not be subject to attorney-client privilege?
No.
Your Honor, oh, I'm sorry, but I agree with the witness, no.
All right. Are you able to tell me what, if anything, led to the audits taking place?
Your Honor, again, that would be attorney-client privilege.
Okay.
Do you have another topic area that you'd like to cover? As a heads up, we're nearing the time allotted for your thoughts.
Right. Okay. The other issue that we have well, I asked Mr. McGowan about and I'd like to follow up with you is has to do with health insurance for the contracted out employees. BWLDC conducted a survey that was reported in Steve Lanning's story rebuttal testimony that found that only 41% of the workers, contracted out workers working for Pepco had health insurance, leaving 59% of those contracted out workers without health insurance. And Pepco did not offer any evidence in this proceeding rebutting that evidence or rebutting that finding. Are you aware of any evidence rebutting that finding?
Your Honor, I'd like to point out, first of all, that that was done on surrebuttal testimony. There has been no opportunity for the Pepco until right now to comment on that. So the assertion that we have not said anything to rebut it is incorrect. I'd also ask that Mr. Petruska point to or show the witness whatever he is talking about. Thank you.
Sustained. Point to a line or page that you're referencing, please.
Of the rebuttal testimony?
Yes. And the witness can respond, if the witness can respond to whatever the witness' personal knowledge is of the question.
Mm-hmm. Right. What? So can I just ask whether the witness has a response to my question?
I believe we're asking for a particular. I have asked for a particular reference to the testimony. If you could direct the witness to what it is you're asking.
Okay.
Yeah, if you could share the information that you're asking me about, I'd appreciate it.
So it would be in okay, so it's in the surrebuttal testimony of Steve Lanning at page it's at page 6, lines 5 through 7.
Could you just share it on the screen, please?
Sure. 1 second.
If you have the reference there, you could read it for the witness.
Okay, I'll just read it. Sorry. So the testimony is, thank you, Your Honor. The testimony is, now consider that Liuna's survey of the Pepco contractor work found that only 41% of Pepco's contracted out workforce received health insurance coverage from their employer. And there's a footnote there, and it cites to the specific citation of the survey, which was attached to the exhibit. And the question was whether you're aware of any evidence rebutting that point.
Yeah, so the survey itself was not included in the information. Some of the results from the survey were there. I can't validate any information on the survey, nor was I asked to validate any information in the survey. There's a lot of redacted information on the subsequent spreadsheets, and it's not really clear what questions were asked and what some of the columns stand for. So I can't validate any information, or was I asked to?
Okay. Since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, has Pepco taken any action to encourage its contractors to increase healthcare coverage of the contracted out workforce?
Yeah, obviously the care of the workforce is very important. We make sure we work with reputable contractors that are qualified to do work on our system. We make sure they work with safety, quality, efficiency to deliver safe and reliable service to our customers.
Right. So was that a yes or a no?
Yeah, their terms and conditions with their employees and how they staff is individual with each one of those companies.
Right. So are you aware of any action Pepco has taken to encourage them to increase their healthcare coverage?
I'm not aware of any, but that doesn't mean there was not any.
Okay. And do you agree that ensuring access to healthcare for the contracted out workers working on Pepco's line is important to the safety and reliability of Pepco's service?
As I stated, the safety and reliability of Pepco's service is guaranteed by hiring qualified contractors that work safely with quality of work, with our company values in mind to deliver safe and reliable service.
Okay. So it's dependent on the contractors, which in turn is dependent on their workforce, isn't it right?
I wouldn't characterize it that way.
Okay. How would you characterize it?
As I've stated previously, we work with qualified, reputable contractors that deliver safe, quality, and efficient services to our customers.
Thank you. Mr. Petruska, you didn't mark any exhibits, so do you have any that you want to mark and move into evidence?
No, we already admitted the letter that we discussed yesterday, so I don't have anything new.
Thank you. The commission has no questions. Are there any other, I don't believe there are any other interveners that have questions. So this witness is dismissed.
Oh, Your Honor, before we go, it's
Pepco,
okay.
Yes.
May I please move? Yes, thank you, sir. I'd like to move into the record Pepco M, Pepco M1, Pepco M2, and Pepco 2M, please.
Yes, you may, without objection.
Thank you, sir.
Now, sir, Mr. Sullivan, you are free to go.
Thank you, sir.
All right. Does that conclude the company's case? Lost counsel. She disappeared.
Yeah, I'm on. This is Bill Sullivan. Andrea will be right back on. She had logged off.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Just give her a moment.
We cannot proceed without.
You want to just sit here? I'll start the video.
I apologize, Your Honor. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, yes.
Hold on. My technology, I had a little technology issue. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you perfectly fine. Please proceed.
Thank you, sir. We conclude our case. Thank you.
All right. Thank you. It's a little early, but I think this is a good opportunity for us to take a short lunch recess. I think that, go ahead.
I'm sorry. And we do have one witness that we would like to cross. So would that come up after lunch then, sir?
Yes, that'll be when OPC or the interveners put on their case. You will have an opportunity to cross them at that time. All right.
Thank
so with that, we're going to take a break. We're going to take a lunch recess. Let's come back here at 12:45. Very quick lunch.
Great. Thank you, sir.
So now
Thank
we're
you,
in
Chairman.
recess until 12:45. Thank you. Okay. We're back on the record. Formal case number 1156. All right, the company has concluded presentation of their case. We will now move on to the interveners, beginning with our statutory party, Office of People's Counsel. OPC, please call your first witness.
We are ready to proceed, and Lawrence Daniels will proffer up that witness.
Good afternoon, Mr. Daniels.
Good afternoon, Commissioner Phillips, Commissioner Beverly, or Chairman Phillips, Commissioner Beverly. OPC calls Dr. Johannes Mariam to the stand.
Can you hear me, Mr. Mariam?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yes, I can.
Office, the Commission Secretary, would you please swear in the witness?
Yes. Raise your right hand, sir. Do you swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this proceeding is the truth and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Dr. Mariam, if you would please state your full name and occupation for the record.
Sure. My name is Johannes Mariam. My occupation is senior economist with Office of the People's Counsel. My business address is 1133 15th Street, Northwest, suite number 500, 20005.
On whose behalf are you appearing in this proceeding?
Office of the People's Counsel.
Okay. Do you have before you your pre-filed direct testimony dated July 27, 2020, consisting of 10 pages labeled as Exhibit OPC-H and 13 exhibits labeled OPC-H1 through OPC-H13?
I do.
Was the testimony prepared by you or under your direct supervision?
Yes.
Are there any corrections or additions to be made to your testimony today?
No.
If I were to ask you the same questions that are contained in your testimony, would your answers be the same today?
Yes.
Do you adopt Exhibit OPC-H as your sworn testimony in this proceeding?
I do.
Your Honor, I request that Dr. Johannes Mariam's pre-filed direct testimony labeled as OPC-H as well as exhibits OPC-H1 through OPC-H13 be marked for identification purposes.
So marked.
Thank you, Your Honor. The witness is now available for cross-examination.
Company, witness is yours.
Good afternoon. Let me try again.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Nope.
We can hear you, Mr. Son. Now we can.
How about now?
I hear you.
I can hear you.
Look at us, Eureka. Thank you and thank you. Good afternoon, Dr. Mariam. Thank you for being with us this afternoon. I have but some brief questions to pose to you, and they will be relating to OPC-H, and that was your testimony that was identified.
Okay.
So thank you. So if you could you please turn to page 2 of your testimony?
Okay.
Thank you. Specifically, if I could direct your attention to lines 4 and 6. And I'll read, you state that the purpose of your testimony is to present an examination of the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the residents of the District of Columbia. Is that correct?
Yes.
And did you conduct any formal analysis or studies to assess the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the residents of the District of Columbia?
I did a brief analysis, not in particular residents, but rather on the district economy in general, which is a reflection of the impacts on consumers as well.
Okay. And did you conduct any surveys of district residents to assess the economic impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on these residents?
No, but I did evaluate information from the DC Chief Financial Office as well as other sources.
Wonderful. If you could please turn to page 5 of your testimony.
Okay.
Wonderful. Specifically, if I could direct your attention to lines 6 and 9. There you state that you conducted research on how the COVID-19 pandemic will impact the U.S. economy. Is that correct?
Yes.
Could you identify which source materials you relied on in your research?
Sure. Let me first state that the research doesn't mean a lot of things. One of the things could be you can actually bring together a piece of information, synthesizing to come up with a decision, a solution for a problem. And so in this particular case, what I've done is given the analysis that was conducted, or at least forecast by the Congressional Budget Office as well as other offices, that details the impact of the pandemic on the US economy. I try to examine what does that mean for the district economy. So one way of doing that is actually to conduct a correlation analysis of how the DC economy would be impacted by the impact on the US economy. And so one simple analysis one can do is actually to do a correlation analysis. Does the district economy directly impacted by what's happening on the overall economy? And so I did a correlation analysis. And that analysis, not only the US economy with the district, but also the metropolitan area. And so that gave me a result that's really high in terms of correlation factor. And so that's one piece of analysis. Another one that I did is
Excuse me, if I could interrupt you, Dr. Mariam,
Sure.
because truthfully, you didn't address the call of the question. The question was, please identify the source materials you relied on, not necessarily how you conducted your research.
Oh, I did collect data from key economic indicators such as gross domestic product data from the EIA as well as from the Economic Bureau of Research. In particular, gross domestic product time series data for the DC economy, for the metropolitan, as well as for the US economy. And I use that data to examine how to what extent the two economies may be correlated or related. And so that's one piece of analysis.
All right, so to be clear, your research entailed reading and reviewing the source materials of other agencies.
Plus, do a preliminary analysis of correlation. Although correlation does not mean causation, any parameter that's actually in a causal relationship also is greatly correlated. And so by virtue of that, I did a correlation analysis, which is based on the data that's available, publicly available.
And with respect to this correlation analysis that you mentioned, was this published?
No, it's not. It's cited in my studies, actually done for the internal purpose, for the purpose of his testimony, because as you know, there isn't a lot of publicly available information at the moment regarding the impact of the pandemic. So what I did was use publicly available information, try to assess what that means for the district economy. And so I did not go beyond this very simple and yet informative analysis.
Okay, and where can one find your analysis?
I can certainly provide. It was done in-house. I'm willing to provide that analysis.
Thank you. And I'm not requesting, just asking.
Yeah.
Also, if you could please now turn to page 6 of your testimony.
Okay.
Specifically, if I could direct your attention to line 15. There on line 15, you opine that the consumer assistance programs contained and proposed in Pepco's enhanced MRP should not be approved, and you list 3 reasons on the coming pages. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Could you please turn to page 7 of your testimony, please?
Okay.
Okay. Specifically turning to lines 12 and 13.
Okay.
And on those lines, you indicate that one of the reasons that you object to Pepco's customer assistance programs is because, and I'm quoting now, the consumer financial relief programs proposed by Pepco are not being funded by our shareholders, but by ratepayers. So my question to you, Dr. Mariam, is it your understanding that customer assistance programs must be funded by utility shareholders?
I did not entirely say that should be entirely funded by shareholders. What I'm trying to address here is the very livelihood or survival of Pepco itself entirely depends on the ability of consumers to strive, to regain lost income, lost wages, and whatnot. And so what I'm trying to say is an effective solution to an urgent need right now depends on a shared responsibility of helping consumers, not only shareholders, but also government, non-governmental entities, as well as ratepayers. And so putting the burden entirely on the consumers who are already burdened by the pandemic is not fair. And it's not, in my opinion, it's not going to be a just solution to an immediate need.
Thank you. And another question for you, Dr. Mariam. Would you oppose the customer assistance programs that Pepco is proposing, filed in conjunction with a traditional rate case as opposed to an MRP?
Yes, I do, because this is an unusual situation, an unusual event, something that requires an immediate solution. Consumers are really crying out for help. And you've seen through the community hearing that more than 70 consumers have testified before the commission in writing as well as in person that they've been hurting. And so attaching any relief program to a very unusual problem to a formal rate case proceeding is not really just. It doesn't produce a result that's fast enough, that's not soon enough. And in fact, if you see the office's petition back in May, Council Member McDuffie's letter, as well as even as recently as last week from Commissioner Beverly, consumers need help now, not a month from now. And in fact, our office is recommending that if a task force is established now, through stakeholders, vetted programs can be implemented before the end of this year. And so what I'm trying to say is this is a shared responsibility, not shareholders only, but everybody else.
Thank you, Dr. Mariam. No further questions.
Sure.
I was on mute. Apologies. Did you have any exhibits marked, Pepco, Mr. Hassan?
No, Your Honor, we did not utilize any cross exhibits for this witness.
All right. Office People's Counsel, would you like to move your exhibits into the record? Yeah, you're on mute, Mr. Daines.
Why would you do that? Okay. Yes, Your Honor. I would like to move into evidence the following exhibits, OPCH and OPCH1 through OPCH13.
Without objection.
Thanks, sir.
Hearing none. Mr. Mariam, Dr. Mariam, you are free to go.
Thank you.
Office of People's Counsel, call your attendance.
That was the only witness, Your Honor, that was called for cross. I do believe that Pepco did waive any further cross, but you might want to check with Ms. Hassan just to be clear on that. Thank you, Chairman.
And
Ms. Hassan?
yes, Mrs. Mooten Henderson is absolutely correct.
Thank you. All right, so we'll move on to the next intervener. Aoba, do you have any witnesses you'd like to call?
Everybody has waived cross for both Mr. Bruce Oliver and Mr. Tim Oliver. Did you want me to mark their testimony, or if it's been stipulated to? It has been pre-marked?
It's been stipulated. We can deal with all of that at the end.
All right, thank you.
All right, moving right along, district government. Have on my list here.
Yes,
witnesses.
Your Honor. Pepco has waived cross on our witness, Ms. Courtney Lane. So you can move those, their testimony into evidence now, or stipulate to it, mission of it. However,
hold off one moment. That is the final witness I have on my list. Did I miss anyone? All right, hearing none, I would like to take a brief recess. I'm going to check with my counsel to make sure, in the very likely case that I missed something, that we clean that up right now and give us a brief 10-minute recess. We'll come back and we'll wrap up this hearing early. We're in recess until 1:10. Okay, we're back on the record again in formal case number 1156. First, to begin with, there was some confusion, at least among staff, on whether or not there was a need for the parties to now walk through, once again, all of the exhibits that have been accepted. I know early on we said to streamline the hearing, the commission will accept the party stipulations noted in the joint response. Right now, I would like to hear from the parties. If you feel there's a need for clarity to walk through your exhibits again, we're certainly willing and able to do that. The chair recognizes Ms. Francis.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. As long as the exhibits are marked with how they were pre-identified, then I don't think there's any need to walk through them because there's nothing to change. As far as I know, every witness for Pepco, AOBA, OPC, we've all got our testimony pre-identified. So as long as we're using the old marking system and Pepco's witnesses from yesterday used the way they were pre-marked, I really don't think it's necessary. I mean, I'm certainly willing to do it if other parties in the commission feels differently, but as long as the exhibit numbers and everything's pre-identified, I'm good with it.
Any response?
Commissioner. Go ahead, Kim.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I was just going to agree with Ms. Francis. The company is amenable to her suggestions, and we will make those modifications to exhibits Pepco 1 through 19. They were identified yesterday to revert back to the former practice of using the alphabet.
That is the commission's preference. We ask that everyone do the same. The commission has exhibits. We have already marked 2. We have the remainder of the exhibits that was presented to everybody. We will mark and move those in sequentially as they are presented in the list that was provided to you all, unless, of course, someone objects to the commission's exhibits. Second, there are 2 outstanding responses to bench requests that must be submitted to the commission by close of business on Friday, October 30th. Third, we asked OPC to put its reconsideration motion into writing and file with the commission by close of business Thursday, October 29th. Any responses by Pepco to the motion shall be due on Monday, November 2nd. Fourth, motions to correct the transcript and the final corrected list of cross-examination exhibits are due November 10th, 2020. And finally, per the ruling during this hearing on the change to the procedural schedule, the initial briefs are now due December 9th, and reply briefs are due December 23rd. With that, the record will close on December 23rd. Are there any final matters before we conclude?
Yes, Your Honor, this is Brian Caldwell, District Government. Is there, I mentioned earlier in the hearings that the District Government was working with Pepco to come up with a list of stipulated exhibits. Is there a deadline by which you would like to have those exhibits?
Yes, please. Please hold on one second. I'm seeing the court reporter. All right, I think we're good to proceed. All right.
My question was whether or not the commission has a date by which it would like to see any stipulated 2 exhibits filed.
Would you please submit that to the commission by Friday?
By Friday. Very well. Thank you.
Thank you for the clarification. Ms. Francis.
I hope this is my last question. The conformed testimony, what is the date that you would like the conformed testimony due?
November 10th.
Okay, one last question. Are we supposed to put that in the box or file it with the commission or both?
Ms. Francis, you have exhausted my knowledge of how it should be submitted. So I would direct those questions to the Secretary.
Give me 1 moment, sir.
It's taken me a while to get this virtual stuff down.
Understood, and I do agree. I have to say, you seem like a pro now. We all are pros now. after this.
Huge compliment. Thank you.
And Ms. Francis, the conformed testimony simply needs to be filed in the docket.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, with that, I want to thank everybody for their patience, for their diligence, and for, I think, doing a pretty good job this week. So with that, there's nothing further before the commission. This hearing in 1156 is concluded. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.